how Stern can call snacking with celebs at a fancy restaurant exhausting. Exhausting. Like he finished the overnight shift in a coal mine. Or hearing Kat talk about her pets.
Fair.
But I get it, life is tough, especially when you've been cut off from the world for 2 years in a $20 million beach house. I mean, you have no idea how tiring it is walking all the way from the wine cellar to the tennis court and back. Do I sound jealous? Yes.
Look, what he did, I mean, look, people to this day, they make fun of Howard Stern because of who he is now and the way he behaves now. That guy's the man. He was the pioneer. When he was the king of all media and he was telling everybody to suck it, going after him, the government was fining him. Yeah. They were fining his businesses millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit on the radio.
He was putting a Klansman on with Young Thug.
And now he's woke. Insisting on free speech. They were the motherfuckers that were censoring everybody.
Right.
They wanted to lock Howard Stern up in jail. They sued him. His parent company had to pay untold amounts of money. How much money did Howard Stern's company get fined? It was hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. Insane amounts of money. The government was trying to shut down a radio guy for talking shit. He was out there doing wild shit on the radio.
He was putting a Klansman on with Young Thug.
And now he's woke. It's crazy.
Trick Daddy?
Trick Daddy.
Yeah, he has to be, though, because dude, the skeletons, that guy.
Yeah, look at this.
God hates.
Oh, and she
No, there's
escaped.
also Hollywood Squares, but yes. Okay. They used to bring them back all the time.
Once. In Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last, but they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists. He's living in the Hamptons. What would the Stern of now think of the Stern of before?
He's gone from...
On his radio show, Howard Stern defended wokeism, saying it's a compliment when someone calls him woke. Listen.
If woke means I can't get behind Trump, which is what I think it means, or that I support people who want to be transgender, or I'm for the vaccine, dude, call me woke as you want. I'm not for stupidity, but I am woke, motherfucker, and I love it.
Oh dear, he swore. He swore that'll win over the woke.
Mom and I had
Watched them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you. Mm-hmm. I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now. I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Rogan's
The definition of woke, it's if you call someone a know-it-all, you're not complimenting them on the breadth of their knowledge. Yeah. You're saying you don't know as much as you think you know. So, yeah, woke doesn't have anything to do with vaccines. What it really means is sort of a slavish devotion to left-wing ideology and then repeating it so you can get social credit.
Right.
That's really what it means.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're smarter than anybody. And he had said in another part of this that because I believe in the science. Well, if you believed in the science, you wouldn't be hiding out like Howard Hughes.
For 14 years. 14 years.
And that's not paid by the station, that's paid by him.
Fined owners of radio station licenses that carried the Howard Stern show a total of $2.5 million for content and considered to be indecent. Indecent. Like, why do you have those rules? Like, why do those rules exist? To keep obscenity from television and like... Maybe that was a good idea in 1950 when people didn't know any better. Do they still call it Sirius XM?
Still Sirius XM, and I've heard that it's Howard's money.
Yeah, but he has so much. Well, first of all, if he leaves, they're
oh yeah,
because that's like how many subscribers?
Yeah,
will bail when that guy leaves.
Dude, I did Howard Stern show 3 months ago, and I thought he wasn't in the room, but the way they have that set up is you really believe he's in the room, like almost like a hologram.
They tricked you.
Dude, I was talking to Howard Stern, but he was in Long Island or wherever he was, Florida, and I was in
With every insight.
Appeared on Howard Stern, where he said he'd even vote for a wall over Trump. Harris replied, "I'm not a wall, but I am plastered." New York Times opinion piece says we should abandon the idea of masculinity. "I'm way ahead of you," said one man. I thank God for Howard Stern because he does make me feel normal by comparison. Because I'm like the Fox recluse. I don't do anything. I don't go anywhere. But he makes me look like, Pete Davidson on a...
Yeah, he's a germaphobe. Like, his wife rescues cats. That's her job, apparently, her thing. But you can get toxoplasmosis.
That's true.
Cryptosporidiosis.
AIDS.
And
No, you can't.
no,
But
you can't get. But you can get.
I mean, what are the chances I get that again?
Because he had the affair with Jessica Hahn,
Right.
who was the secretary, the hot secretary. And Jessica Hahn wound up Sam Kinison. And they had
I forgot about that. Yeah.
they had a terrible breakup. They would talk shit about each other on Howard Stern.
You feel the atmosphere thicken the instant Joe Rogan leans toward the camera, lowers his voice, and unleashes a sly challenge. How did the loudest rebel on radio turn into the valet who parks the establishment's limousine? A single sentence, equal parts curiosity and accusation, hangs in the studio lights, and somewhere in the back row a gasp slips out before the applause sign even flashes. Greg Gutfeld, coiled beside him like a stand-up comic who moonlights as a cultural coroner, flashes a half grin that says, "Don't blink, because the autopsy is about to begin." Within seconds, the two men ignite a verbal chain reaction that travels from Fox's soundstage to TikTok, Reddit, and every smartphone in between, setting up a televised reckoning that makes seasoned producers whisper, "Did they just bury Howard Stern live on the air?" Rogan starts by rewinding the clock, reminding viewers of the wild-eyed icon who once racked up FCC fines faster than most hosts rack up ad reads. He sketches the legend in strokes so vivid you can almost smell the stale studio coffee of 1995. Stern blasting fart sound effects while taunting government lawyers to "come and get me." Stern guffawing as strippers alphabetize their breast implants on air. Stern gleefully pitting a Klansman against a black rapper just to watch sparks fly. Back then, Rogan notes, nobody in mainstream media was more allergic to conformity. When the FCC tried to muzzle him, Stern tripled the decibels. When advertisers threatened to vanish, he crowed that he'd buy space just to run apology letters to absolutely no one. That posture, middle finger sky high, hair like a frayed power line, made him the unfiltered voice of 90s counterculture and earned him the self-bestowed crown, King of all media. Then the camera cuts to present-day Stern. Gray curls trimmed, voice softer, political opinions curated like a Hamptons tasting menu, and Rogan's brow arches as if he can't decide whether to laugh or mourn. The juxtaposition stings. A man who once baited censors now praises them, who once bragged about live radio chaos now extols the mindfulness benefits of isolation in a $20 million beach compound. Rogan cites the pandemic years as the turning point. Stern broadcasting from a never-ending quarantine bunker, trading raw spontaneity for remote interviews drenched in hand sanitizer metaphor. Rogan doesn't scream. He simply lets the audience feel the whiplash. An outlaw broadcaster transformed into a sermonizing gatekeeper wearing noise-canceling headphones. Gutfeld slides in next, wielding metaphors like shuriken. He calls Stern a lone wolf that enrolled in obedience school and came out a poodle with a pedigree certificate. Laughter ricochets, but underneath the punchline lies a sharper blade. Gutfeld argues that the transformation isn't just cosmetic, it's ideological. This is the same host who once turned bodily fluid jokes into morning commute rituals, now scolding podcasters for platform responsibility. Gutfeld's eyes spark whenever a fresh comparison lands. Stern used to be Ozzy Osbourne biting heads off bats. Today, he's the mall Santa reminding kids not to run. Each image is ridiculous by design, but the pattern is unmistakable. And the crowd howls because ridicule feels like righteous payback for an idol's perceived betrayal. Rogan re-enters with data nobody can shrug off. 11 million average listeners per podcast episode on Spotify, dwarfing the shrinking satellite audience Stern addresses. He doesn't brag. He frames it as proof that audiences reward authenticity, not varnished talking points. When he reminds viewers that Stern once dismissed podcasting as a hobby for unemployed comedians, the irony lands like an elbow drop. Rogan, the one-time underdog, is now the juggernaut. Stern, once Everest, now looks like a souvenir snow globe on the media mantle. But the segment's brilliance isn't just in the takedown, it's in how effortlessly the hosts stitch each barb to a broader culture war narrative. They cite the sudden vogue of labeling everything toxic masculinity, the op-eds declaring comedy dead if it ruffles feathers, the public confessions of celebrities terrified to speak without legal counsel present. Gutfeld shakes his head. Remember when Stern mocked PR reps? Now he practically is one, only the client is his own legacy. Rogan nods and pushes the idea further. When rebels turn into referees, ordinary people lose the soundtrack to their rebellion. In one sentence, he reframes the roast as a public service announcement, an attempt to rescue authentic dissent from extinction. Every paragraph of their conversation sparks micro-explosions online. Memers clip Gutfeld comparing Stern's pivot to watching a wolf trade in blood moon howls for avocado toast. TikTokers lip-sync Rogan's quieter, lethal quip that courage doesn't retire, it atrophies when you lock it in a beachfront panic room. Twitter threads debate whether Stern is a cautionary tale about aging out of relevance or a hero for evolving with the times. The more the debate rages, the more the original clip snowballs, because outrage, admiration, and curiosity all count the same to the algorithm. Yet, the script demands fresh tension every few minutes, so Rogan pivots to the pandemic-era controversies that first cracked Stern's armor. He recounts Stern's on-air rant likening unvaccinated people to cockroaches clogging hospital beds, a line that shocked even devotees who'd forgiven 3 decades of shock humor. The hypocrisy, Rogan argues, isn't in supporting vaccines. It's in a self-styled free speech absolutist suddenly shaming dissent. Gutfeld piles on, noting that same period when Stern scolded people for posting beach selfies, while broadcasting from his own private shore. Each inconsistency becomes a narrative stepping stone, keeping viewers sprinting forward to see which forgotten soundbite will surface next. Behind the zingers, the hosts weave psychology. They analyze the intoxicating safety of elite circles, how multi-million-dollar mansions insulate stars from the friction that once honed their edge, how corporate boardrooms reward predictable virtue over volatile authenticity, how aging shock jocks fear irrelevance more than censorship. Rogan describes it as the oxygen mask of approval. Once you taste the rarefied air, you'll cough at anything unfiltered. Gutfeld snaps his fingers. That's why the old Stern had fans. The new Stern has subscribers. The crowd erupts because delivered as a joke. It sounds true. No high-retention script survives without mid-story spikes, so Rogan summons a hypothetical. What if Stern accepted an invitation to do Rogan's show in person, 3 hours, no handlers? Imagine the marketing. Imagine the ratings. Imagine, Rogan whispers, the smell of fear and honesty colliding in the same studio. Gutfeld claps like a game show host awarding a grand prize and muses about a special episode of his own show where he, Rogan, and Stern share one mic and no safe words. The fantasy dangles just long enough to make viewers yearn for a crossover that almost certainly won't happen, yet seeding that fantasy ensures they'll keep checking feeds for updates. Momentum shifting, Gutfeld digs into Stern's transition from Playboy radio libertine to Hamptons brunch moralist. He rattles off clips where modern Stern scolds comedians for punching down, then contrasts them with archival bits of Stern orchestrating lesbian dial-a-date segments. The whiplash is comedic gold, but Gutfeld treats it like a courtroom exhibit, proving duplicity beyond reasonable doubt. Rogan steps back and lets silence hit for a beat, an audio-negative space where viewers can hear their own incredulity. The next paragraph ups the personal stakes. Rogan reveals that behind closed doors, indie podcasters treat Stern's evolution as a cautionary fairy tale. Lose touch with your core, and you'll end up curating guests the way airlines curate safety videos, sanitized, formulaic, and guaranteed not to offend anyone who can afford first class. That line lands because everyone has felt that dulling sensation, when a once raw friend starts phrasing every opinion like a LinkedIn post. Gutfeld taps the desk. When the wizard becomes the curtain, the magic dies. The metaphor is silly, yet piercing, and social media clips multiply again. As the conversation swells, Rogan broadens the frame to aging icons across the spectrum. comedians scrubbing edgy jokes from specials, rock stars rewriting lyrics to dodge hashtags, influencers rebranding overnight to align with whichever movement trends highest that week. He argues that society isn't losing its sense of humor, it's outsourcing it to algorithms that punish nuance. Stern's saga, then, is less a one-man tragedy than a symptom of a larger cultural autoimmune disease, the body politic attacking the antibodies of dissent it once relied on to stay honest. Gutfeld, ever the closer, ties the theme to economics. He breaks down satellite radio churn rates, ad-tier experiments, and how subscription models secretly encourage hosts to placate boardrooms rather than audiences. Rogan nods and counterbalances with the volatility of ad-based podcasts. Authenticity is our currency. The moment listeners smell a counterfeit bill, they spend it elsewhere. The exchange feels like two open ledgers slamming shut, proof that beneath the jokes, both men calculate risk and return with the precision of hedge fund quants. But a good story craves another twist, so Rogan reads a fresh quote from Stern's latest broadcast in which the veteran host insists, "If standing up for vaccines is woke, tattoo it on my chest." Rogan shrugs. "Cool, man. Just don't pretend you're still the pirate king when you're captaining the cruise ship." Gutfeld chimes in that he admires Stern's commitment to causes. What irks him is the scolding tone. He likens it to a former punk rocker lecturing fans for moshing too hard. Again, the studio howls, but attentive viewers sense the deeper point. Moral evolution isn't a sin. Abandoning the rebel brand while insisting you're still edgy is. To prevent monotony, the script leaps to comedy theory. Rogan talks about tension and release, explaining how Stern's early career weaponized tension like nitroglycerin, while modern Stern diffuses tension before it sparks. Great for dinner parties, fatal for shock radio. Gutfeld adds that outrage fatigue sets in when every edgy host becomes a hall monitor. The audience retreats to TikTok pranksters who risk demonetization daily just to feel alive. The hosts hold that tension a moment, then slice it with an absurd visual. Stern meditating in a soundproof panic room adorned with motivational cat posters, before pivoting to the next segment. In the final act, they give Stern a lifeline. Rogan recounts how Robert Downey Jr. rebuilt his career by facing criticism head-on, how Dave Chappelle turned cancellation into box office gravity, how Mike Tyson re-earned public affection by leaning into genuine vulnerability. Gutfeld suggests Stern could recapture rebels' hearts by orchestrating the most dangerous interview of his career, inviting his harshest critics, handing them the soundboard, and vowing not to flinch. In that moment, Gutfeld says, the wolf could tear the poodle costume clean off. The crowd hushes, caught between skepticism and hope. Rogan's closing salvo is soft, almost fatherly. "Howard, if you're listening, people don't miss your shock value. They miss the feeling that you meant every word. Authenticity ages like bourbon, gimmicks age like milk." He urges listeners to remember that legacies aren't static. They're fragile manuscripts overwritten daily by action. As cameras fade, Gutfeld sneaks in one last zinger about mailing Stern a fart noise button for Christmas, in case he wants to remember what irreverence feels like. Laughter erupts, credits roll, but viewers stay seated because the conversation feels bigger than the show that birthed it. Hours later, bar Stern challenge trends worldwide, fans petitioning for a Rogan-Stern sit-down. Stern's camp issues a polite no comment. Satellite investors refresh dashboards. Podcasters smell crossover ratings. Late-night hosts eye the controversy like seagulls eyeing a beach fry. And the audience, millions strong, keeps replaying that first line. How did the loudest rebel on radio turn into the valet who parks the establishment's limousine? Whether they cheer, rage, or simply shake their heads, one fact remains. For a brief electric window in modern media, two men revived the ancient art of calling royalty on its own hypocrisy and dared listeners to decide if the crown still fits. That decision now belongs to everyone still hitting replay, still arguing in comment threads, still sharing grainy clips of 90s Stern alongside polished shots of 2025 Stern, asking which man felt more alive. Because when the rebel becomes the referee, the rulebook loses its thrill, and the next voice to rip it up could be yours.